Okay, so you can start doing your thing, and I do have the ability to edit somewhat. But
Hello, folks. My name is Peter Alden. I'm a local Concord naturalist. I worshiped Thoreau as growing up here in town. I was born in Concord, and I used some of his notes and observations on birds as a little kid bird watcher, running over the places that he thought were important, the Great Meadows, the Walden Woods, and various other spots around town. And I really worship Henry. They're taken from his journals. A book like this, Thoreau on birds. He's becoming more and more of a naturalist. I know he's a great philosopher and thinker. My focus has been on Henry's focus on nature. Henry's focus on nature is partly, in Walden. This is a book you've never seen in edition. It's in the public domain right now of Walden, but his journals actually have many more notes in it. And it very much inspired me to know that I was born in Emerson Hospital in Concord, as Henry was, and to know that our town hero, which Henry sort of was a bird watcher. It was a comforting thing for me as I was growing up. I ended up going to the University of Arizona and then running tours to Mexico, all over the world. And it was Henry partly that inspired my interest in nature. I'm very proud of it. A few of you may know a book that I did called the National Audubon Field Guide to New England. We have a picture of Henry's cabinet here. We have a picture of Walden Pond. And Henry is in our mind. He's turned on so many people to various facets of his many, many interests. And just most recently, before we get started on some things that I've done here in honor of Henry, Jane Goodall, who many of you know, was our featured speaker and got the Thoreau Prize in nature writing this summer. And she probably wouldn't have come to most people. She'd been hiding out in England for many years during COVID, but she worshiped Thoreau and came over and graced us with 600 people watching the other day. What my connection with Henry has been through the years, now that I've returned to live in Concord, has been to get involved in things beyond birds. Because once I came back here, I noticed so many plants that I didn't know, didn't remember as a kid walking through the very same woods and fields and forests and various waterways around Concord and so forth. So I got very interested in invasive alien plants, which Henry did not have. He did not observe any invasive alien plant that I can find. It's all relatively new, basically 1900s phenomena. And we don't know what Henry would have thought about what we should have done or could have done or should do about the invasive alien plants that are taking over so many ecosystems. I had an epiphany back in, the late 90s, as I was starting to do this book, which is Beyond Birds. I did this series around the whole US in 8 different volumes. So I started saying, geez, I know the birds of the world because I've been working in 100 countries around the world, showing people birds and mammals, having a great time on 7 continents, sometimes 7 continents a year, from Antarctica to the Arctic, Australia, and wherever. But I started to get more focused locally in my hometown, and sort of became, I'm in the process of becoming a complete naturalist here, and I'll never know everything about everything. And I had this idea since I started the Christmas bird count in Concord back in 1960 as some kid in high school. And it has become the largest official Christmas bird count. It's actually an early winter bird count. And we have over 400 people participating every year, sometime around New Year's Day. I got involved in birds and started Christmas bird counts, the first ever ones in some parts of Arizona, Mexico, South America. I designed the first ones, and they often continue. But I got very interested in a lot of different creatures, the reptiles, the frogs, the mammals. And then I started to get more and more into botany. And I was involved with a gentleman named Richard Premack, who did this wonderful book on Walden warming and how climate change comes to Concord, or Walden Pond area, and all these things that happened more recently on climate change, which is such a great, great issue. But one thing I decided to do was, I've done all these Christmas bird counts up and down into Hurricanes, but nobody seems to have done a total nature thing. Christmas bird counts are done mainly in the US, and it's usually in the wintertime, and there's snow and there's ice, and there's not many leaves, and there's no flowers, and so forth. And I said, why don't we do something in the summertime? When all the bugs are out and all the flowers are out, and the grasses are up, and the leaves are on the trees, and some of them are still in flower. And I decided to do what became involved as the world's first BioBlitz. We called it a Biodiversity Day at first. We started out in 1998. over at Walden, at 5 miles in all directions from Walden Pond. They're inviting hundreds of experts. We were trying to become the first group of field naturalists who've seen 1,000 species in a day, centered on Walden Pond, the sacred heart of environmentalism here in the United States, really, and around the world to some people. And so everybody came. We were honoring Henry David Thoreau, and we chose a date as close as we could at the time he moved into his cabin at Walden, which was July 4th and 5th. Then his birthday was a week or so later. So we gathered that, and we've done this several other times now, huge bio blitzes, honoring Henry and other naturalists. They all came here to hang out in the image of, in the place that was sacred to Henry Thoreau and so many people. And I was wondering who I could get to sort of attract even more people to the world's first bio blitz. And Ed Wilson and I got to know each other as we tried to honor my former godfather, Roger Torrey Peterson, a great author and naturalist. And so for 12 years, Ed Wilson and I pretty much ran Roger Torrey Peterson Memorial Lecture Series at Harvard, and got, Jane Goodall, got Richard Leahy, all sorts of famous people to come to honor Roger. But Ed Wilson and I got together, and I decided right at the time the Walden Woods Project was being formally kicked off in June of 1968, and I'd been dialing for experts and so forth. And Ed and I decided at that time at the Walden Woods Project, with Don Henley and Jed Kennedy and all sorts of famous people there, and said, yeah, let's go for it. Let's do July 4th. And Ed sort of picked July 4th because it was so sacred a time for Henry on his move to a little cabin at Walden. And so Ed's little Rolodex and my Rolodex, we attracted several hundred people to come to Concord and go out, and insect experts and lichen experts and ant experts and beetle experts and birds and flowers and trees and shrubs. And we did all of these things. Ed Wilson has done all sorts of famous books, and he worshiped Thoreau. He lived near here. And so whenever he's interviewed by the New York Times or some magazine or something, he often said, let's meet over at Walden Pond. And it was very special to Ed Wilson, who's been considered the greatest living until last Christmas, a writer of science and bringing science to both scientists and to amateurs. His Diversity of Life, his book called Naturalist, was a great seller. And I want to give a few quotes, and one of his most recent books is Concord Naturalist, which we sell to shop at Walden. We're very proud to be employed part-time. But he did a book in the early 2000s with a title that irritated me because I think, geez, I'd like to write that book, but he beat me to it. It's called The Future of Life. And this is still available in quote paperback, but not in hardback. And I just want to take a minute or so to read a few quotes because he chose to, the prologue, the beginning of his book, The Future of Life. He could have gone to many, many great people and scientists of various kinds, but he chose Henry Thoreau, who was a virtual, stepbrother, so to speak, of Henry Thoreau through the ages. And just a few quotes from his letter to Thoreau at the start of his famous book. I am at the site of your cabin on the edge of Walden Pond. I came because of your status in literature and the conservation movement. You left too soon, Henry, but your restless spirit still haunts us still. Darwin wrote and published in 1859, The Origin of Species. You, Henry, purchased one of the very first copies available in America and annotated the book briskly, things he wanted to know and learn or perhaps challenge. In my imagination, I have settled here beside you at Walden Pond. We stand up to go a-sauntering. And we do have a Thoreau sauntering society through the Thoreau Private Trust these days. Two kinds of naturalists exist, those who specialize in macro things that you can sort of see, your plants, your animals, your reptiles, and then another group of naturalists who study the little things. And Ed Wilson studied ants as his main thing. Thoreau, your family put emphasis on the first syllable, as in Thoreau, you did not. Thoreau naturalist, you would have liked the Biodiversity Day we held in your honor here recently. Which conceived by Peter Alden, Concord resident in the International Program. On July 4th, 1998, the anniversary of the day, in 1845, you moved your furniture into the Walden cabin. Peter and I were joined by hundreds of naturalists from around New England and a few other states. And we set out to list for the very first time ever, not just birds, every living organism larger than a millimeter, to see if we could be the first little crowd of people to see over 1,000 species of plants and animals in one day. And we actually came very close to 2,000 species. And we've done this several more times on his 70th, 80th, 90th birthday summers. And we're now up to 3,600 visible trees, flowers, shrubs, and bugs, and birds, etc., and mushrooms and lichens here in the Walden area. We aimed for 1,000 and we got nearly 2,000. It is apparent to Ed Wilson that you, Henry, were moving towards scientific natural history when your life prematurely ended. Our BioBlitz really caught on, and as you know, called BioBlitzes, and they've been taking place most states in the United States, whether it's a small scale one or a very large thing. And several dozen countries around the world have had gatherings of all the different field naturalists. You know, from a little place like Luxembourg to Austria to England to Costa Rica to Australia. An idea that Ed and I put together here honoring Henry Thoreau is now gone worldwide. Now, Henry, prophet of the conservation movement, mentor of Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr., accept this tribute. You were a keen observer of the human condition, Scrooge of the Philistine culture, Greek Stoic, drift in the new world. You are reborn in each generation, invested with new meaning and nuance. Sage of Concord, Saint Henry, you fairly earned your place in history. Saint Henry, that does sound very nice. Your ideas on succession and other living communities pointed straight toward modern science and ecology, and you were sort of think as one of the founders of the science of not only ecology and natural succession, but also environmentalism in general. You are far from the hard-eyed frontiersman that some people thought you might be. Frontiersmen did not saunter, did not botanize, and never read Greek. Your spirit carved an epiphany. You sought enlightenment and fulfillment by reduction of material existence to fundamentals. I'm going to end here. Nature is ours to explore forever. It is our crucible and refuge. It is our natural home. Save it, you said. In wildness is the preservation of the world. So I think that that is a great thing that we've done here. The BioBlitz, keep Henry's name alive. And it's amazing how he sort of eclipsed his mentor, Ralph Waldo Emerson, in fame, if not in fortune, and so forth. But Henry has just excited so many people. It's the anti-slavery thing, the philosophy thing, his focus on government in general, as well as nature. I mean, he was interested in so many things. It was very much a shame that he passed on as early as he did just before the Civil War. But he's my hero. I hope he's your hero. And I hope that you will join us in our efforts to keep his memory and his focus alive by joining the Thoreau Society. It's a wonderful group based here in Concord, honoring a great gentleman. Show me a lot of rich things.